disagreement over. He sent it back, highlighted some sections and said, hey, fill these out for me and it'll be good. I respect that too, agents who are willing to help agents, because at the end of the day, whatever we're doing, we've all been new, right? None of us started out with 10 years of experience in any particular industry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is The Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome back to The Closing Table. My name is Kevin C. McIntosh. I am your host, and per usual, I have another guest on that's going to educate us on real estate, specifically in their experience and in their market. Today, we want to welcome Sebastian Cowgill to the show. How are you, Sebastian?
I'm doing great, man. Kevin, I appreciate you guys having me out.
Absolutely, man. Of course, we appreciate you being here. We know you could be out taking care of business, getting more people into their homes, but you're here with us, so thank you. With that being said, let's get into it. Starting the show off with an icebreaker. Not sure if you've ever seen the show, but I like to start off with an icebreaker, get things a little bit loosey-goosey. For you, I have something called fill in the blank. I have about 4 sentences all related to real estate, but they are not complete. So I need you to fill these in. Sebastian, are you ready?
I am.
All right, let's do this. First one. In 10 years, the real estate industry will be blank.
Digital.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, let's keep going. Blank is how you add value to your home.
Renovation.
Okay. Common obstacle to obtaining a home is blank.
Financing and or credit.
Last one. My real estate market is mostly affected by blank.
Oh, that's a tough one. I would have to say that my real estate market is mostly affected by development.
Nice. You gave some different answers. I like that. Always appreciate that. All right, cool, Sebastian. I'm looking forward to a good show. Thank you for starting off our icebreaker nice and chill with us. We appreciate it. Next segment of the show is where you actually introduce yourself a little bit more. If you can, in 60 seconds or less, Sebastian, tell us who you are outside of real estate.
Absolutely. So I'm a young guy. I'm 23. So I'm still trying to balance work with the other activities that folks my age are doing. So I'm pretty active. I love golfing. I love being outside in the outdoors. One of the biggest things that shaped my life has been travel. So I'm really into travel. I wouldn't call myself an avid traveler just yet, because time consumes most of my time spent on work consumes most of my days. But yeah, travel's been a big thing for me. It's really opened my eyes to the way of the world and gave me some great life experiences.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah, man. 23, the world's your oyster. And the fact that you're already into real estate and seems to be pretty successful and good at it, man. You got the world ahead of you, man. I love to hear it. All right, so let's talk about where you're doing your services. At this point, just describe the current market that you serve geographically, first and foremost. Just paint that picture for anyone who may have never been there, and then get into some of the economics in regards to what's going on real estate wise in your market.
Okay. Yeah, so I serve a couple geographically disparate areas. So I serve Genesee County and Livingston County. I know they're close location-wise. Genesee County is probably, for most people, the biggest city there is going to be Flint. It's about a half an hour to 45 minutes south of Saginaw and about 30 minutes north of Brighton, 45 minutes north of Ann Arbor. So Genesee County is kind of where I kicked off my career. And what most folks should know about it is that it's really broken up, between the city of Flint itself, which has been affected economically, of course, because of the water crisis. But then you've got areas like Fenton and Lake Fenton where people are doing really well. And then the other area I serve is Livingston County, and I heard it described recently in a news article as a commuter county. So a lot of people that live in Livingston County don't work there, right? Livingston County is kind of like their little hideaway. It's super rural. It's not very well developed, at least compared to an area like Oakland County, a little bit further east.
Right.
And I think people like that. They like that it's their own little slice of nature, right? It has that up north feel in certain places, but you're still close enough to all the big stores and whatnot to get what you need.
Wow. That was a real good description. I'm gonna be honest, as someone who's lived in Michigan my entire life, I've been through Livingston County. I don't think I've ever heard anybody describe it like that. That kind of makes me look at it a little bit different. I had no idea as far as it being a commuter county or whatever you called it.
Yeah.
That's different. Okay. Interesting.
Well, and
Interesting.
given my icebreaker answer, I said the biggest thing affecting my market is development. So a lot of the
Oh,
people
yeah.
there
Yeah.
are anti-development, right? In the townships too, local
Really?
townships
Really?
like absolutely Heartland in the past, which is the city I live in,
Uh-huh.
has denied proposals from big developers to come in and do neighborhoods, to do shopping developments, that sort of stuff. But they've turned them away time and time again. Now, recently, the last couple of years, Heartland Town Square has started to be developed. There's a movie theater now, which was kind of a big thing for us. But
Oh,
like I said, a
wow.
lot of folks just enjoy their rural lifestyle and don't want it to be tainted by the city.
I get it. I get it. But that's crazy, especially in today's market where all we're hearing about is low inventory. I don't even think
Yeah.
I've heard you say that yet. That's the crazy thing. But anyway, with that being said, that shows in that specific market that you're serving, they're not even looking to it doesn't is it even a need for more housing in that county? It seems like everyone's satisfied, everyone has what they need, and like you said, they're not even pressed about more development, more homes, or even more investments coming in there. But that's a little bit different.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because Genesee County, I would say far and away, doesn't need more supply. There's plenty of homes on the market in Genesee County.
Really?
What Genesee County needs more than anything is to have folks come in and fix up the existing houses, because there's an abundant
Okay.
supply of houses in need of repair. In fact, the city of
Mm.
Flint has committed to tearing down almost 2,000 homes over the next couple of years just because they're blight houses.
Okay.
Genesee County is the complete opposite. There aren't a ton of houses on the market, but it's not like folks want other people moving in, right? Now a lot of people might want to come to the county, and there's a shortage of what I would call starter homes, those mid twos to
Mm-hmm.
mid threes for people moving in, young professionals moving in. There's definitely a shortage of those, but bigger builders like Pulte have kind of addressed the need in the recent years and started to kind of get started on those big subdivisions.
Nice, nice. It's a breath of fresh air to hear something different going on in different markets. Like I'm not hearing that story too often. So
Yeah.
it's unique. It's unique. Okay, let's keep moving forward though. Let's keep moving forward. I want to talk a little bit about you and what you have going on. Um, Now I know your schedule changes, it varies. No day is pretty much the same. But if you can, paint the picture as descriptive as you possibly can, walking us through the process of maybe one of your most recent work days. Can you tell us like how it usually starts all the way down to how it usually ends? What's your routine?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, I'll probably catch some flack for this because I'm not an early riser. I'm more of a night owl. So, I
Mm,
usually don't get in until about 10. But I think that the real estate world doesn't start until noon in a lot of places. Your
I would
buyers
agree.
and sellers, yeah, they get to work, and the first thing they're focused on is not answering your phone calls or checking Zillow or reading your emails to see what new listings are out there, right? So a lot of the activity, at least on the client side, doesn't happen until afternoon. Now, I do
Yep.
take advantage of those first couple hours to do the secretarial stuff, right? The stuff nobody wants to do. We've got to answer emails. We've got to get our searches set up and make sure that our clients, the stuff that they don't see, the behind the scenes work is being taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So, yesterday, for example, I got in around 10. I started my day with answering emails, playing catch up. I'm also dual licensed as a loan officer, so there's a little bit of work
Okay.
that I can do there on that side, as far as clearing conditions and getting files in and out of underwriting. Um, and once noon rolls around, I'm on the phones, right? I'm talking to clients, I'm massaging deals. If any of my deals have issues that are arising in the last 24 hours or so that I haven't already addressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock rolls around, I'm on the road. And it's kind of a running joke that I'm the guy in the office that goes all over the state, because I really do. I've served everything from Bay City to Downriver and Woodhaven.
Oh, nice, nice. So it's not necessarily you just staying in one area that you just feel like you're the most familiar with, or an area that you grew up in. You're actually exploring the entire state that you have, have access to as a licensed realtor.
Yeah, I for someone who's lived in Michigan their whole life, I've moved around a lot. So I grew up in
Same.
Heartland. I grew up in Brighton. I live in Heartland currently, but I've lived in Wixom. I've lived in Commerce. I went to school in Ann
Hmm.
Arbor. So I would say anything southeast of Lansing and Bay City, I will serve.
Okay. Okay. Good. 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 That paints the picture. All right. So nice. That just lets us know that you have a routine, you have a system, the way that you do things, and obviously it's been working for you. So we love to hear it. Getting into your exact experience, I want to know if there's ever been a time where you had to think on your feet to handle maybe a pet related problem. And maybe,
Okay.
a client brings their dog to a showing, or there's already a dog there, or there's a loose dog in the neighborhood, whatever story you may have. Can you tell us about a story and how it was handled?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of an agent's best qualities is to be able to think on their feet, not just at the showing, but during the transaction as well. But yeah, I had a showing, and it probably wasn't that long ago, if I had to guess, maybe 2 or 3 months back. And it's interesting because if you know the real estate game, you know that we all use an app called Showing Time to schedule our appointments. And
Mm.
between Showing Time and the MLS, they give us, some information, a little heads up before we go to that appointment. Any additional information we might need. Hey, there's an alarm. Here's the code, whatever. And that includes pets, right? So if the homeowner has a pet, the agent should know ahead of time. Now, I went to a showing and wasn't informed of the pet, and it wasn't a big deal for me because I was able to show up. I've got pets at home. An unsecured pet isn't something that bothers me, but I didn't have enough time to give my client the advance warning. And when they showed up, the owner's pet got out right between their legs. So,
Oh.
needless to say, that showing didn't go as planned, and I spent the next 30 minutes trying to get the owner's pet back inside. Thankfully, it was resolved. The owner had actually been watching from across the street, so then that's not even that common either. So if it hadn't have been
Mm.
that way, maybe who knows? But we are thankful we were able to get the pet back inside. The one thing we all know about cats is that they love cat food, right? So a couple of treats and some wet cat food was all it took. But
Oh, there you go. There you
yeah,
go. Yeah, man, I like that you all have that app. The kind of I used to be a delivery driver, and we used to on our app it would tell us ahead of time if a house had a pet or something like that. That type of information goes a long way because I'm not a pet person per se. Like
okay,
I probably get along with a few dogs that I've actually been around for a while. Like the dog that's actually here in this building, I'm very nice dog. But other than that, if I'm first seeing a dog, I'm instantly scared. So to have that heads up, the way I know how to manage it is a lot, it works for me. But sometimes,
right.
like you said, you come in a situation where you don't have a heads up. So you have to be able to think on your feet. It's nice that you were able to handle that. I didn't know it was a cat until you just recently said cat food. I feel like that's the hardest to try to chase down and get back. But
Yeah,
you
I
tried the cat food and it worked.
it's not the first time a pet's gotten out, and I will say dogs are way easier to get back inside. They
Exactly.
usually
Yep.
come. But no, that cat took us a minute for sure.
I know when you said 30 minutes, I'm like, man, 30 minutes that's a long time to focus on something else other than what you came for. But
Right.
I digress. I digress. Let's talk about some mistakes that you may have made in your career. Specifically, let's talk about your first transaction. Any mistakes that you look back that you may have made from your first transaction that you think back now and you obviously know how to handle?
Yeah. So my first transaction was probably a little bit different than most agents. I was actually doing a multi-family property. It was a 4-unit apartment building, and I was representing an investor who was purchasing it. Um, there were a lot of mistakes made. I mean, that first purchase agreement, probably today I would look at it and just I would rip
Mm-hmm.
myself apart for it. But the one thing I'll say is that through my entire life, I've never been the guy that was afraid to ask for help when he needed it. And I reached out to the listing agent. I remember that first phone call and introduced myself. And I said, "Hey, I want you to know ahead of time. This is going to be the first offer I've submitted." And I think a lot of agents would steer away from doing that maybe because they
Mm-hmm.
want to portray that that sense of confidence and experience, especially client facing, right? You don't want your client to know maybe that it's your first transaction because you're afraid that they'll shy away from using you. Um, and like I said, I just told him clear as day that it was my first transaction. I was going to need some help, and when I sent the purchase agreement over, he sent it back, had highlighted some sections, and said, "Hey, fill these out for me, and it'll be good." Um, I respect that too. Agents who are willing to help
Mm-hmm.
agents because at the end of the day, whatever we're doing, we've all been new, right? None of us started out with 10 years of experience in any particular
Exactly.
industry.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah. I agree. Some agents, from what I've heard, I'm not an agent myself, even though I'm at the closing table. Some agents really kind of shy away from even dealing with people or with other agents who don't have that experience. Let alone just an agent being vulnerable enough to even tell them that it's their first transaction or their first few. So I can understand the nervousness, as far as saying it and just telling that other agent. But like you said, I mean, everybody has to start somewhere. So I kind
right.
of, I don't want to say hate, but I don't like when people kind of shun you off because you're just starting something. Like, you are here too. Help me out. Let's kind of figure this out. And you make your mistakes, you learn from them, you continue to grow. It didn't take you out the game. So I want to applaud you for that. That says a lot about your resilience.
I
Have you ever
appreciate it.
faced a communication challenge with the listing agent during a critical moment of a showing or of a transaction? Two-part question. How did you handle it? What strategy would you recommend to actually come to a resolution?
You know, um, there's probably a communication issue every day in my business. We live in a digital world, right? Things are moving towards that digital landscape. Communication has gotten easier and easier over the last 10, 15 years. So I can only imagine 25 years ago, what it was like when agents were still using printout MLS books right before the
Yeah.
before
Oh
things like
man.
RealComp came around. Um, but yeah, no, I would say the number one break in communication is usually during showings. And it's probably just because it happens so often, right? Showings are a large part of our business. So
Mm-hmm.
lockbox codes, something simple. You show up at an appointment, and for some reason the lockbox won't open. Maybe the key is missing, or the code could even be wrong, right? That's probably the most common. But there's one that
Mm.
comes to memory that was during the middle of a transaction where I had a big communication breakdown between me and the listing agent. And it was right after inspection. And I can't tell you still to this day whether he went on vacation, broke his phone, what might have gone wrong, but we had done our inspection and it had gone poorly. And I needed to notify the listing
Mm.
agent because we have a certain time frame that we have to follow.
Correct.
Um, our contracts are legally binding and they give us X amount of days, depending on how they're written, to complete the inspection and notify the sellers. If the buyer's agent can't get a hold of a listing agent in a circumstance like that, and you can't notify the sellers, it can create a whole other set of issues besides just, hey, we want some repairs done, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, we were able to overcome it through over communication. I always tell people we over communicate, especially when there's bad news. If there's bad news, we communicate it early, we communicate it often, we make sure our points are clear and heard, and we communicate it to all of the necessary parties. So in that case, we called the agent, we called his broker, called his assistant, and by the time we got around to his assistant, we finally were able to get that information relayed over to the seller.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Yeah. I couldn't. Did you ever find out why they didn't answer? Why there's no response?
Like I said, to this day, it's still a mystery to me. I don't know if they were
Really?
embarrassed. Embarrassed to say, or perhaps, and we're understanding too. Everybody's got personal
Yeah.
lives, right? If something
Correct.
comes up in
Correct.
your personal life, absolutely.
Yeah.
Again, but for a situation like that, the agents on my team, I tell them, hey, if there's a personal issue, communicate it, right? Just like bad
At
news,
the
we communicate
least.
early and often. Yep.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I can imagine. How you started it off though is very interesting because when I do a lot of research on some of our guests and other agents, I'm looking on their social medias. Some agents like to, mix it up with, showings and a little bit of humor and some meme. The
Yeah.
most common meme that I see it has to do with a lockbox. The keys not being there, or someone not showing up and acting. It was just so. When you said that, I'm like, okay, I get it. It's probably that inside industry humor about the lockbox, and it's a common thing that happens. So I would be so upset if I'm doing a lot of driving, I get to a showing and the key's not there or the password is. I can imagine how frustrating that could be. But that's why I'm not in that industry.
Yeah.
So I
Well,
gotta
and
applaud your patience.
yeah, the amount of times it's happened, you just kind of get used to it. You
Man.
do.
Oh man. Okay. So based off your experience and in your opinion, what's the most challenging aspect of the real estate industry? Do you have any specific examples of that? Besides the
Um,
lockbox thing, obviously.
yeah, besides the lock boxes. The most challenging thing, I think, to individual agents inside of the real estate industry is probably staying focused, motivated, and disciplined. I was fortunate enough to start my career in a place that really fostered my growth. I was on a bigger team and I had a lot of support. Um, and for new agents, I would say if you don't know where you're going or you're at a brokerage where maybe you don't get a lot of support, it's not a bad idea to shop a team, right? To go and look at
Yeah.
real estate teams because you get more
Mm-hmm.
individualized support than you would from just going and joining a big box brokerage and not really ever introducing yourself to your broker or any of your fellow agents. Um, yeah, like I said, the discipline thing really, even in my own life, I find myself struggling with that at times to stay motivated and to stay disciplined when there's nobody telling you to come into work, there's nobody
Yeah.
telling you to finish your tasks. It's challenging. So I would recommend, like I said, to take a look at, especially early on for new agents, joining somewhere where there is that support system and sense of structure, but also doing some soul searching. If you're not a person who can stay easily motivated or can discipline themselves, find a way or find a new system that can help you do that. Or if you do some soul searching and realize that that's never going to be you, it's okay because real estate isn't for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
exactly. First and foremost, I mean, there's phases of a real estate agent that I've been finding out throughout the years of your career. You go through different phases, which I won't necessarily break down again, but ultimately, there is a hump. Like I like to say, there's a period where you have to get over a hump. And once you get over that hump for the most part, I'm not going to say things get easy, but they may get easier. It may be a little bit more routine for you. Things, the system may be able to, run itself a little bit more. You're still going to have to make tweaks. There's still going to be some things that you're going to have to, face that you may have never faced and make adjustments. But nonetheless, once you get over that hump, it could be a lot easier. So I love that you were able to speak on the fact that, it's challenging, but you're still able to manage it and get through it. Super random situation. I would love to know if you've been in this. You're showing a house to a client or whatever the case may be, and someone who unrelated to the transaction, a neighbor, maybe someone in a random car down the street, they're watching you. They're observing you the whole time, and you notice them. Have you ever been in that situation? How do you handle that situation? What precautions do you take? What advice would you give to agents in that situation?
So I think that can cover a lot of different scenarios because it maybe not people who are not parties or related to the transaction because a lot of times nowadays we experience these the video recording devices, right, whether it's a doorbell or inside the home the blink cameras.
Mm-hmm.
We're being watched all the time. I tell everybody on my team and other agents I work with, we're being watched all the time. So you've got to be professional and watch what you say always. Now, outside of that, there's been a couple of situations that I can recall where a nosy neighbor maybe has stopped by. There's one in particular that I would say was the scariest, that kind of rattled myself and my clients. And it's important for us to practice safety measures and when we're showing houses because it's an industry where going into other people's homes in strange neighborhoods where maybe we're not recognized, we can be put into situations that aren't entirely safe. So staying vigilant and aware of your surroundings is key. But that one that I said was the scariest. Yeah, we were inside the home, and a neighbor had come over, shouting at us, and they had thought we had broken in. It wasn't a situation, and
Whoa.
I've heard some horror stories where neighbors show up with shotguns and the like, pitchforks, ready to drive you out.
Whoa.
Thankfully, it hadn't gone that far. They just came over shouting at us, and they were on the phone. And I believed at the time that they were calling the police department. I think they were actually just calling the seller or the homeowner, because there was no for sale sign in the front yard, right? So the neighbors clearly hadn't been
Okay.
notified that the house was for sale,
Right. Okay.
which could have been one of the contributing factors for sure. But yeah, like I said, we're always being watched by somebody, whether it's a camera, somebody behind a screen, or a neighbor that's just looking out for their neighborhood.
Yeah. Oh man, see, that's a whole nother view of the game that I don't even necessarily think I touched on. Like, yeah, nowadays technology, there's cameras everywhere. Everyone has a Ring camera now, or cameras on the inside. And I never even thought about the fact that, yeah, you're gonna have nosy neighbors, you're gonna have people in the community, and I don't want to say nosy as in a negative connotation. I mean, they're
Yeah.
doing what they're supposed to do to protect their neighborhood. So I'm not mad at it, but their approach sometimes could come, a little bit rude or whatever you want to call it. But nonetheless, it still takes a professional like yourself to be able to handle a situation like that and still remain calm and have everything, taken care of. I don't necessarily I would be very, very uncomfortable. But once again, this is why you're meant to do this. Earlier in the show, you mentioned technology, digital, the real estate industry will be. I want to kind of explore that a little bit in a way. Have you witnessed any recent or notable shifts or trends in the real estate market throughout your career? And do you have any examples of it? It's technology involved. I'll let you go ahead and elaborate.
So, for context, I joined the industry at the tail end of 2020.
Okay.
And I'm sure most people remember we were in the middle of a pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So, a lot of things had moved from the in person showings to being as remote as possible. We did a lot of virtual showings, there were a lot of 3D tours and walkthroughs. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
that there were plenty of folks who bought homes without ever stepping foot inside. And
Crazy.
that's just a sign of the times. If it didn't happen during the pandemic, I'm sure it would have happened eventually. I think the pandemic catapulted us forward a lot faster than we were, on trajectory to do.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, technology has kind of ebbed and flowed. Even over the last 3 years, there was the advent of iBuyers, companies like Zillow that would come in and buy your house cash. And I know a few of the bigger companies that got in have since gotten out. Not sure if that was just an unprofitable business for them or if it wasn't sustainable given the pace that the market was on. But
Right.
I'm sure that will come back at some point. I'm sure that it will be the norm to purchase a home online. Maybe not yet, but I know that there's a lot of agents out there who are nervous about that. And the number one thing I can say to agents who are scared of adapting to that market is if you can get with the times or get ahead of the times, incorporate as much technology into your business as possible. If you know that the big companies are moving digital or trying to make things as easy as possible, right, by removing the laborious tasks of going and showing houses and going and seeing them in person, find a way to incorporate something like that into your business. If you do listing photos but don't include walkthrough videos, or if you do listing photos and don't include a 3D tour, you got to ask yourself why, because a lot of buyers are looking online at that. And homes with 3D tours and video walkthroughs sell faster also. So not only is it going to improve and increase your current business and sales, but it'll safeguard you from the advances that are happening in the industry.
Got you. And I'm glad because you kind of answered the follow-up question I was going to have, which was if real estate is headed into a more digital space, where do you see real estate agents in during that time? I've often asked about the fact that people are buying cars completely online now. A dealer doesn't even have to be involved. You don't have to go talk to anyone for real. For it, you can go grocery shopping and buy all your groceries without even going to see a person nowadays. So, in my honest opinion, I agree with it moving digital, but I also see it in a space where people could just go online, get pre-approved for a loan online, purchase the house online. I've often thought, like, where would the real estate agent fit in during that time? And I mean, you kind of answered it. Overall, I know that you still want to be personable. You still want to have that face-to-face, belly-to-belly connection with someone. But I don't know. I'm still curious about that. I guess we'll see as the industry adjusts, right?
Yeah, and when I say digital, I think that a lot of agents, like I said, are nervous or maybe apprehensive of their own places in the industry. Um,
Correct.
the biggest thing I could say is that the difference between buying a car online and buying a house online is that if you know that you're looking for a 2014 Chevy Silverado, you know what a 2014 Chevy Silverado looks like. They all
That
look
is
the
correct.
same. One might be nicer than the other, have fewer miles or more miles on it, but
They're
houses
mass
are
produced.
completely different.
Correct.
So until the day that we're all living in tiny homes like Elon Musk that are mass produced in a factory somewhere, I think
Hmm.
that agents are going to be necessary, um, especially when it comes to pricing. There is no simple and easy way to price a home. I know a lot of agents do their CMAs differently,
Hmm.
um, but it comes back to if you're pricing a Silverado, if you just compare it to the Silverado we sold off the lot last week, and you know that this one has 10,000 fewer miles, well, we deduct X amount or we add X amount to the price
Correct.
for that. With a home, it's not that simple. There are so many nuances, especially with custom builds out there nowadays, and folks that have renovated their homes. There might have been a time in a day when post World War II, a lot of neighborhoods look cookie cutter, and there are still cookie cutter neighborhoods today.
For sure. Yeah.
But take a 80-year-old home, and let's say it was in a cookie cutter neighborhood. Those have all been updated, or most of those have been updated nowadays, and the insides are not going to look the same. So it's really
Hmm.
hard to price out homes, especially when you're sitting behind a computer and you haven't seen it in person. So to
Oh
some
yeah.
extent, agents will be necessary forever.
Love it. That was a great response, by the way. I just have to objectively look at all perspectives and then kind of challenge it a little bit. But I love that response, by the way. And with you being relatively young in the space, I honor and respect your response to that, because I see you have a lot more years ahead of you in this, and you'll probably be here when there's a lot more different shifts, not only in technology but just in the industry in general. So
Right.
it's interesting to hear your perspective on that as a young real estate agent. Lastly, I want to ask you, Sebastian. This is where I kind of like to really get into our guest's head and figure out if there's a book, movie, quote, even philosophy that you live by that you feel like changed your life for the better or changed your perspective both personally and or professionally for the good. Share that with us, please, so we can be inspired.
Yeah. Okay. Um, So this was probably 6 or 7 years ago when I stumbled upon it. There's a book called Outliers by Malcolm
Oh
Gladwell. I'm
yeah,
not sure
Malcolm
if you're
Glad. Yep.
familiar. It's
Mm-hmm.
a book I hear talked about time and time and time and time again on podcasts, TV, radio, in person. Everyone seems to have been buzzing about this book at some point in the last 10
Yep.
years. And there's good reason, because the gist of it is, if you haven't read it, and I don't want to throw any spoilers in there, it's that the book looks at outliers, right? Outliers in
Mm-hmm.
performance. So if you've got, I think one of the first examples in the book is hockey players, right?
Yep. Yep.
Professional hockey players. And they deep dive into it and they try to figure out, well, what makes these people who make it all the way from pee wee hockey up to the major leagues, what makes them special?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think if everybody in that book, or if everybody reads that book and really gets out of it what I got out of it, the answer is practice. There's
Yeah.
there's a magic number of hours. I think that number is 10,000 hours of practice,
10,000,
where
10
yeah,
years.
where
Come
you
on,
become a
man.
professional, or
Yep.
you can get to that pro level. So if anybody wants to read a book that can kind of inspire you to break out of that little mold you may be in, Outliers is a really good one. Now, another one to follow that is The Compound Effect. If you've ever read it, it's a short read,
Mm.
um, but it kind of builds on that. It's the power of doing small tasks daily that compound, kind of like compound interest, and
Correct.
will get you to your goal. A lot of people set really lofty goals right off the bat, but they don't think about those little steps in between. And one of the things that I think I do really well is I've got lofty goals. I've got I wouldn't call them dreams, but I've got really high goals, but I've also got the game plan in the short term, the 3 to 6 month game plan figured
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Man, love that, man. I love when people come on here and I love new book recommendations, and I also love the ones that I'm familiar with too, because I can 100% agree. When I first started in broadcasting in Detroit, it was like 2014. My program director or operations manager at the time at iHeart in Detroit he gave me that book. And I didn't know. I'm like, why is he giving me this book? And I read it and I was like, does he think like I'm gonna be great? Like, am I this next, like, what's that? But overall, I took away the same thing. Repetition, those hours. Also read Mastery by Robert Greene. It was the same thing. Like, you gotta put in that time. So I love that, man. That speaks volumes. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, at this point, if you have any other last words and or want to tell people how they can reach out to you, Sebastian, please do so now.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to again thank you for having me on. I think that the one piece of advice that I'd like to leave people with, and I was kind of thinking about this before the episode, like what are people going to get out of this if they watch it?
Mm-hmm.
Hire a professional when you're looking to buy a house or sell a house. There's no replacement. Like I said just a few minutes ago when we're talking about digital, hire a professional. And I think, to boot, interview a couple professionals. I don't like being shopped, but I know it's a part of the process. And I'm not the best fit for every client. Neither is every client the best fit for me. So interview a couple professionals in that home search process. Don't get stuck in the, oh, well, this is so and so. I've known them for X amount of years. No, there's a certain sense of loyalty I get to childhood friends and that sort of stuff. And of course, I want all of my childhood friends to use me as a realtor. But again, I'm not going to be the best fit for all of them. So yeah, I think that you're doing yourself a disservice if you're not looking with a professional, and if you're not talking to at least a few of them at the start.
All right. All right. Well said. Did you want to leave any contact information for our audience?
Oh yeah, no, you can find me on Facebook at Sebastian Cowgill. That's really the only platform I'm big on. If you have any other questions, you can email me, Sebastian at Our Home and Co. And my other contact information is on Facebook too.
Love it, man. Thank you, Sebastian. This was a great show, man. Great talk. I appreciate that. For our YouTube audience watching right now, if you've gotten to this point in the video, this is the opportunity to make us both happy. Hit the like button, please, and thank you. Make sure you also share the content and subscribe to our channel. If you are listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platform, please do the same. Give us a like, a 5-star rating, and subscribe for our latest content. And make sure you download the episode too. And Sebastian, I'd like to leave our audience with a question before they leave the chat. So this is for you, audience. How important is the environmental sustainability of a home to you when making a purchase? Let it marinate. Think about it. Put your answers in the chat below, in the comments below. Besides that, we'll talk to you next time.